People always ask me, what is the best thing you've ever made? And I don't know if I have a best, but I have a favorite, and this is it. This is my all-time favorite build, and luckily for me, this was my personal dining table build, so my best project ever, favorite project ever, didn't get wasted on a client. But these are 2 slabs of Oregon black walnut, and they are a book-matched pair, meaning they're these sequential slabs in a tree, so they give that really cool mirror imaged effect. However, when I got these slabs from Gobi Walnut, they were already a little too thin. They weren't even 2 inches thick, and I like my tables to finish at 2 inches. So I knew they were going to be very thin, which is why I had so many freaking dominoes in there, because I wanted to maximize my chances for kind of straightening out these slabs, because they were just a little bit wavy at this point. But this here is the start of why I like this build so much. I'd never seen anybody do this. Of course, that doesn't mean nobody's ever done it, but I've never seen anybody do it quite this way. My wife asked me for an extending table, said, hey, I want to make it bigger when guests come, but I love these slab tables. I love this live edge look. I love this continuous grain look. So I wanted to find a way to make this an extending dining table by still maintaining that continuous grain look. So that was the real challenge of this build. Like I mentioned, this slab was already as thin as I wanted it to be, so I had to find some rather creative ways to maximize the thickness, and here's what I came up with. I am making these small little patches for the underside because there are so many low spots. You see those kind of bandsaw skip marks. Those are low spots on the underside of the table, so what I'm doing is I am patching them all. So there's going to be, in the end, probably a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch thick patches all along the underside. And I know you're thinking that's going to look ridiculous, but you really won't see it. There's going to be a beveled edge. And I can tell you right now, because I've been living with this table for a while, nobody has ever noticed them. I actually forgot they were here until I'm watching this video now. After I got all those patches in there, I took it and had both sides surfaced, and it is a little bit thinner than I wanted it. It's about 1.7 inches, and ideally I liked 1.75 to 2 inches, but I'm going to work with what I have because I love the way these slabs look, and this is one way to help keep it flat. Those are C-channels, and I have 4 of them in there, and these bow ties here, these weren't entirely necessary. However, the slab was so pretty and almost so perfect looking, I think the bow ties kind of give a handcrafted look to it, whereas it could almost look like a veneer if I didn't have these in there. And I did have to get approval from my wife before adding these bow ties, and she actually agreed and thought they'd be a really nice accent to this table. I do feel that bow ties can be a bit divisive though, so I always do like to go back through the comments and see what people think. So let me know if you're pro bow tie or anti bow tie, and honestly, not going to hurt my feelings either way. I understand they're not for everybody. This is where the build got really sporty. I did add C-channels to each of the extension wings because this is going to be the part that's going to be really prone to warping and twisting, and cut the same 22.5 degree chamfer on both the table and the extension wings. But now I have to find a way to make that extension wing made up with it, and this was so freaking difficult to get this cut just right. But you see there, I was basically cutting the inverse of that 22 degree notch, and it actually worked in the end, and I have a really good reveal shot at the end that'll show you just how well that fits together. As far as I know, nobody had used extrusion to make these continuous grain extensions like this, where when the extensions aren't used, there's no visible hardware. And since this first video went up, I've seen a number of people that have been either inspired by this design or mimic this design, and some have given me credit, some haven't, and I absolutely don't care if anybody gives me credit, because almost everything I've done has been learned from someone else or inspired from someone else. And if I happen to have one original idea in my lifetime, I am more than flattered that other people use it for their own inspiration. If you're anything like me, you can see why I love these book match slabs so much. The symmetry, that center grain that's a little bit lighter that just gives a nice flow to it. Just my favorite design for these slab tables. And I'd say I'm in the home stretch, but there was a lot of work that went into cutting that center stretcher to get it to fit right between those 2 pieces of steel. In the end, we got it worked out though. A nice snug fit there. I didn't want any bolts or hardware for that, although you never even see that center part, I've realized, with the chairs around it. And this here is my friend Big Jim. He wasn't even breaking a sweat as we carried this big slab in. I was about dying though, and got it mounted, did a quick test fit of the extension wings, and they sag a little bit until you tighten them up, and it's about freaking perfect. And this is why it's my favorite build of all time. It was a real challenge, and believe it or not, my wife actually likes it even more than I do.